Today, we're going to learn what it's like to be the wrong parents through Isaac and Rebekah. As you know, Isaac and Rebekah suffered and had no children for many years. Isaac and Rebekah prayed for a long time for their children. So they held their 2 sons in their arms through the time of patience. But their upbringing wasn't biblical at all. On the contrary, they raised their children in their way rather than in God's will. After all, such poor parenting can bring disaster to the family. It causes discord among brothers and a clash between daughter-in-law and parents-in-law. Esau and Jacob learned a lot about faith from their parents. But Isaac and Rebekah's attitude of devotion to their children was not biblical. How did the result come about? Let's look at it one by one. Esau grew up as an uncontrollable child. Contrary to her parents' wishes, Esau married a foreign woman. Esau makes the wrong choice again when Isaac and Rebekah don't like his marriage. Esau is getting married again to a woman who is Ishmael's descendant. Is Jacob different from Esau? It was no different. Jacob was similar to his brother. Religious parents also raised Jacob, but he had no faith in God. What he believed was not God but his plot and tactics. Jacob became a man of God through various hardships that he went through regardless of his family. Jacob changed after meeting God personally through God's direct intervention. It resulted from Isaac and Rebekah's wrong way of raising their children. Isaac and Rebekah raised their children according to their preferences rather than God's will. Isaac and Rebekah have different perspectives on raising their children in the Bible. Isaac favors Esau, and Rebekah favors Jacob. Favoritism like this brings disaster to the family. Isaac and Rebekah acted as they liked the words on the book of Judges. Isaac knew that God would make the kingdom of God through his youngest son Jacob. However, Isaac preferred Esau over Jacob, contrary to God's will. So Isaac works secretly without Isaac and Rebekah knowing. Isaac plotted that God's promise would come true through Esau, not Jacob. It is not biblical at all, regardless of God's will. Did Esau thank his father for trying to bless him by breaking God's promise? Not at all. As I said before, Esau was not a good son to Isaac. He was an uncontrollable son who lived his way rather than his parents' will. Watching Isaac ignore God's will, Esau would have thought, "My father doesn't live according to God's will, so why do I need to live according to God's will? I can live my way." How about you? Don't you, as a parent, show an ambivalent attitude like Isaac in front of your children? Today, many Christian parents teach their children how vital God's promises are, but they take God's promises lightly. Like Isaac, children know and acknowledge God's existence through their parents. If parents' beliefs are inconsistent, children cannot have the right faith. The children heard the words of God in their ears, but their eyes did not see them living according to the terms, so they also had a dual attitude toward God. Authority of parents to use right. Another tragedy caused by Isaac's favoring Esau was that Esau blocked the way to God. Isaac's attachment to Esau made Esau rely on himself rather than God. Isaac did not teach Esau that he should trust and rely on God. If your child grows up without knowing God, no matter how well they study and are talented, it is not a blessing but a disaster. Instead, your child's excellent brain and talent will be an obstacle to preventing them from going to God. Even if your child has superior brains and talent, it is the right parent's attitude to teach them to believe in God rather than rely on their ability. Look at Isaac. Isaac favored Esau. But Isaac was not respected and loved by his eldest son. What Isaac received from Esau was disobedience and disregard. We should not be mistaken. Allowing a child to do what they want is not suitable for their temperament and tendency, and it negatively affects the relationship between parents and children. Unless parents use their authority correctly, their children are forced to ignore their parents. So parents who don't teach their children properly have a heartbreaking old age. Isaac's wrong love for his children eventually ruined Esau's life and soul. Rebekah was no different from Isaac. Rebekah knew God's will for Jacob. But she tried to make God's will come true in her way, not in God's way. She even risked her life for her children. It isn't very easy for children. Rebekah believed in God and did not wait. Impatient, she tries to take the role of God. As a result, Rebekah did not think and waited for God to lead her. Even though Rebekah told her child that she believed in God, her behavior was not the act of a person who believed in God at all.